Plus, the violence is so bad in one major American city that the governor is considering calling in the National Guard. We're going to take a closer look at what that really means. One city may be going to extremes to fight crime. It has gotten so bad in Chicago. You've heard the stories, with police actually having to line the streets to make sure that kids can safely walk to their schools. Illinois Governor Pat Quinn says he is open to the idea of calling in the National Guard, actually putting armed soldiers on the streets of President Obama's hometown. Julie Roginski is a Fox News contributor and former political advisor to former New Jersey Senator Frank Lautenberg. Brad Blakeman is the former deputy assistant to President George W. Bush. Welcome to you both.
Hi, Shannon.
All right, guys, according to Article 1, I believe, of the Constitution, there are only 3 reasons that that Congress can call up the National Guard. Brad, does that criteria fit here?
It does not. This isn't a national purpose. This is a local purpose. This is a law enforcement problem by the city of Chicago, who could simply hire more police, or they can get help from their fellow states to send in their troopers or their police at a fixed per diem rate. They have a way out of this thing, but the way out is not federalizing state troops to perform a state function. It's wrong. Our troops should be welcomed into communities at times of national disasters, as we've seen, bringing bottled water, evacuation, and even manning the streets to help police for a national crisis, acts of God. This isn't one of them. This is a self-created crisis for the incompetence of the local officials who can simply hire more cops.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the facts here. Just in recent days, an attack at a park, 13 people shot, including a 3-year-old, shot in the face. I believe 4 others were killed over the weekend, 7 others shot. I mean, this is an ongoing issue. According to the FBI now, Chicago is the murder capital of the United States. Julie, can local authorities get this under control? As Brad suggests, hire more cops. I mean, what's the problem? Is the tax base fleeing? Is it mismanagement of funds? Why aren't there enough officers?
I guess they're claiming it's a budget issue. I would argue that this obviously, for Chicago residents, has got to be the top issue facing them. I mean, if you have kids walking to school every day and as a parent you're not sure if those kids are going to make it because there's such a crime wave going on, I would argue that whatever your budget problems are, hiring more cops, there are about 1,000 cops apparently below with the full force, that they should do that. Brad is right, mostly right about this. I mean, there's absolutely no excuse for not hiring more cops, whether you get state troopers to come in. But, you know, if you're a parent, and we all are, if you're a parent and you're facing kids going to school and you're worried about that, I don't really think you care where the help comes from, whether it's the National Guard. And Brad's right from a legal standpoint. I don't know that there's a criteria here to bring in the National Guard. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think there is. But if you're a parent, I really don't think you care where that help comes from. I don't think you care if it's the National Guard or state troopers or more local cops. You just want to make sure that your kids are getting to school safely. And I wouldn't feel comfortable if I were a Chicago parent worrying about that today, because obviously that's not the case as we've seen.
All right, let me read the grounds. Under Article 1, Section 8, Congress has 3 constitutional grounds for calling up the militia, what we now understand as the National Guard, to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrection, and repel invasions. Brad, there are those who argue that's exactly what's happening in Chicago. There's such a gang influx that things are truly out of control there. Do you foresee any way in which Congress would get involved and say, hey, we're going to send you the extra help because we think it meets this criteria?
Look, these are not enemy combatants. These are criminals. And our soldiers are not, their job is not to take to the streets and fight the American people. That's not their role. The police have the role of maintaining social order and upholding the laws in local jurisdictions, not military troops. So they can answer their own problem by hiring up more cops, by seeking other jurisdictions to come in and augment the police force in Chicago. But certainly troops may be convenient, but it's not the way to go. It is violative of the law, and I think that the governor is at his peril if he uses state troops in this manner.
Julie, how much of this responsibility lies with the mayor, Rahm Emanuel, and do you think the president, with his connections to Chicago, is going to speak out more forcefully about what's going on there?
Well, obviously, you know, as Brad just said, if you don't want to nationalize or federalize this issue, the president really doesn't have a role to play here in sending in the National Guard or anybody else. If this for Rahm Emanuel, yeah, you know, he is the mayor. The buck does stop with him. I think if this were any governor or any mayor, regardless of party, facing this kind of dilemma, obviously you run for the top job, you're responsible for what happens on your watch. And we saw this back in New York City, where I'm from, 20, 30 years ago. We had a mayor who lost his election, in large part Mayor Dinkins, because people perceived him to be soft on crime. This is a fundamental issue that is completely irrespective of party or political affiliation. It's a crisis. And so when you're the mayor of a city and your city's facing a crisis, it is incumbent on you to use every means at your disposal, whether you rely on, again, if he thinks in his interpretation of the law, whether it's the National Guard, if he disagrees with Brad, or asks the state police for help, or hires more cops. But whatever it is, it cannot continue in this way, because if you're a resident of Chicago, you've got to do something about this. And by the way, I'm not sure with the U.S. Attorney there, I'm sure they're focused on it, but you do have a federal issue here. You do have a gang problem. That is absolutely something the U.S. Attorney in the state of Illinois and in the city of Chicago should be focused on, because that's something that obviously is an issue that rises to the level of a U.S. attorney, not just the local prosecutors. So this is an issue that, again, begins with the mayor, probably ends with the mayor, but also has a lot of components both on the state and federal level to look at.
And Brad, legal issues aside of the president actually, calling up the National Guard or encouraging something like that, we've not heard anything that would suggest he'd ever get involved with that. But does he have a public obligation to speak out about his hometown, where things have gotten so vastly out of control that we have volunteer firefighters and police officers giving their time to make sure that kids have safe passage to walk to their schools?
He absolutely has a higher interest in what happens in Illinois and in Chicago than anybody else, because this is where he came from. This is his hometown. Look at how he lampooned Mitt Romney during the election about Detroit. Mitt Romney would let Detroit go bankrupt. He would turn his back on Detroit. Well, Mr. President, you turned your back on Detroit, and now you seem to be turning your back on Chicago and not giving it the attention that you certainly could do. And if the governor does this, what he says he's going to do, and that is use the state militia, in effect federal troops, for a criminal action, then I think the president deserves some responsibility for that action by the governor as well.
Julie, quick final word to you.
I really wish we wouldn't politicize this. I'm not really sure what the president has to do with this, other than the fact that he came from Chicago. And I know Brad, I know you'd love to tie the president to any bad thing that happens, regardless of whether he's in charge. But wait a second. Here's the problem. The president has Syria to worry about. He's got the budget to worry about. Now you want him to worry about local crime rates as well? Give me a break.
He should worry about America first.
Well,
yes.
You're absolutely right. He should worry about America first. But this is not a federal issue, as you yourself just pointed out by saying the National Guard shouldn't be federalized.
It's a hometown issue for him.
So it's a hometown. All right. So he's not the mayor of Chicago. We're talking about Rahm Emanuel, by the way, a Democrat who I'm criticizing, is saying...
Who is his chief of staff.
Right. But okay, he's not acting in the capacity as his chief of staff. He's acting in his capacity as the mayor of Chicago. So let's not politicize this. This is a tremendous crisis for parents and children all over Chicago, and I don't think we should bring Barack Obama into this and try to lay this at his feet.
Let's leave it there, but let's be clear. The president has spoken out on a number of issues that are local in nature, and a lot of folks in Chicago are wondering why he doesn't do the same for them. We'll see if he does. He has touched on it. We'll see if after this latest round of discussion and latest round of killings, there's more from the White House. Julie and Brad, thank you both very much.
Thank you.